Bienvenido. Soy Adriana Marín, vicepresidente de American Society. Qué gusto que nos acompañes nuevamente. Como sabes, en American Society estamos haciendo un esfuerzo con grandes aliados para poderte traer contenidos relevantes e importantes que te ayuden en tu día a día en muchos temas. Tenemos todos los días cosas muy interesantes que te pedimos que estés enterado de lo que vamos a presentar, de lo que estamos trabajando todo el tiempo para ti a través de nuestras redes sociales, donde te pedimos que nos sigas en Facebook, Twitter e Instagram. Asimismo, quisiera agradecer el generoso patrocinio de las empresas aliadas de American Society, que sin su ayuda esto no podría ser posible. Mil gracias a Dow, EY, La Moderna, Constellation Brands y 3M.
Los saluda Larry Rubin, presidente de la American Society.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Soy Patricia Kelly, presidenta del Events and Image Committee de la American Society.
Platicarte un poco de la American Society fue fundada en 1942 por el entonces embajador de Estados Unidos en México, George S. Messersmith, y líderes de la comunidad americana de ese tiempo. El American Society a lo largo de los años ha venido haciendo una serie de eventos apoyando a la comunidad, trayendo a mexicanos y americanos para que estén más comunicados y verdaderamente construyendo puentes de amistad, de relaciones entre mexicanos y americanos, entre México y Estados Unidos.
Hoy la comunidad americana son 2 millones de norteamericanos viviendo en México, miles de empresas creando empleos para mexicanos y mexicanas y cientos de organizaciones lucrativas apoyando a la comunidad en la República Mexicana.
Totalmente. Y aparte de esto, el presidente honorario de nuestra organización siempre ha sido y actualmente es el embajador de Estados Unidos en México. Hoy, Christopher Landau. Juntos, toda esta comunidad que Patty y yo les hemos platicado, hacemos el American Society y nuestro objetivo es poder ayudar y apoyar y coadyuvar para que la relación bilateral México-Estados Unidos trabaje todavía más de cerca.
Sean ustedes muy bienvenidos. Gracias.
Hello, my dear friends. What a pleasure, like always, to be part of the American Society and to do these interviews that it has been really a journey to be with you, to be with the people that we invite to talk with us. And today with this sweet melody of glasses, you know, when we toast and we make this beautiful sound and we let ourselves be carried away by the elegance, but the uniqueness of the personality today of 1000 Stories Wine. And I'm very happy to enjoy the company of Bob Liu. Bob Liu is the brilliant mind behind this exquisite elixir. And it's such a pleasure to be able to enjoy with you and talk with you with this gem from Mendocino County in California in United States. Thank you, Bob, for being here with us.
Hi, Debbie. Nice to see you again. Yeah, so fantastic and great to be able to share our story and talk about the wine.
It's my pleasure. And actually, last time we were in Polanco, we were enjoying one other's company, but I'm sure we'll be very, very soon able to do this again. And you know, Bob, the taste of a wine reflects its history, its process, its uniqueness. And that's the way you, Bob, the master winemaker behind 1000 Stories, decided to give this process a new twist. I know you aged the wine in bourbon cask, and you add this touch of complexity to the wine, and you give it these unique flavors. And 1000 Stories is made actually in combination of these seasoned barrels. Some of them have housed premium bourbon for 13 years, and new barrels that have more pronounced character. And because the wine is made in these batches, each one has its own nuances, its own history. Tell us about all this idea that it's so innovative and so different.
Yeah, it really is different than traditional winemaking. I've got somebody at the door. I don't know if you can hear that. Zoom, right?
Open, we'll be waiting for you.
Yeah, Zoom. So
maybe it's Brad Pitt coming to say hello. So they just
maybe so. Yeah, that whole idea started from years and years ago. I had some experience working at a winery where the cost of barrels, the use of barrels, was very expensive. The wine industry in California was much smaller, and to have access to French oak, you would have to go to France to source the barrels. So right in our backyard, you had bourbon barrels. And so we tried to, use a little bit of them in our winemaking in the early days. But, since then we have, access to great wine barrels. And so we moved away from that. But the great thing about cuisine and beverages today is people are much experience new things. And so we had sort of this idea of bringing bourbon back into the winemaking setting. And so we started playing around with it, and we developed really a way of making the wine that involves batches. And that's very different in winemaking. Usually in winemaking, you have a season and you have a vineyard that you work with, and you have a style that you try to make. You try to make the wine the same every year, but you have differences in vintage. But we have differences in batches because, as you said, we get barrels from these distilleries, and they're barrels of different ages. They're barrels that are different, whether they're at the bottom of a stack or the top of a stack in these rick houses where they age the bourbon. And so every barrel is quite unique and quite different. So we're applying, this barrel that's gone through this different experience and applying it in aging the wine. In this case, it's Zinfandel. And so we're aging the Zinfandel made in a traditional way, but using something non-traditional. And that's this barrel that has had this whole other experience of aging, with the use of bourbon. So it's very powerful. The bourbon barrels have a big impact on the wine. And so we have to really taste the wine as it ages in the bourbon barrel and really decide when we think it's the right amount. What we really want to have happen is that the bourbon barrel adds a sort of richness to the wine, but not dominating the wine, because bourbon is a lot stronger than wine.
Of course. And that's very interesting, because maybe you also get to the kind of people, not only the wine lovers, but also people that love distilled drinks, actually like bourbon. And Daphne Rodriguez and Maffer were telling me that actually this beautiful 1,000 stories that we have here has been very accepted by the Mexican market. And that's very, very good to know, because maybe different kind of people also start to loving 1,000 stories, also because of these nuances of whiskey in it. It's so complex, so innovative in this combination. And these 1,000 stories from Indochino in California have 3 labels, right? From different grapes and vineyard, Zinfandel being the first label to be created under this aging process. And then also you have this technique that gave rise to Gold Rush. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I think just in general, to your point, I think bourbon barrel aging is an invitation to someone. Some people just drink beer or they just drink spirits. They really love bourbon. This is actually an invitation to people to come in that maybe just drink bourbon and to drink some wine. I remember I was at the Bourbon Classic, and there was in Kentucky, and there was a couple there, and they were curious that we were there pouring the wine at a bourbon festival, right? And they were big bourbon enthusiasts. And the gentleman says, "Oh my gosh, you have a wine aged in bourbon barrels. Now I have a wine I can drink with my wife." And so it was an invitation to experience wine, to have permission to enjoy wine. So I think that's the fun part, is that we have a new audience, and so they get sort of the nuance of the bourbon, still a wine experience. But yeah, we have, as we started with Zinfandel, and we have something called Gold Rush Red. And so this is something new, and it has a different weight than the Zinfandel. The Zinfandel has really strong, almost Amarone kind of characteristics, very ripe, where the Gold Rush Red has Merlot, Pinot Noir, Zinfandel, Petit Syrah, and it's a little more. It's rich, but there's more red fruit versus really ripe fruit and spices. There's more red fruit, I would say, raspberries, and there's still the impact of the bourbon barrels, but the wine has a different weight and a different feel to it. So,
I agree with you, absolutely. And then it was in 2017 when Concha y Toro, with the hands of your super wines, came to Mexico. And it made us all fall in love with your wine, with everything that Concha y Toro does here, because they're really made a beautiful entrance in the Mexican market for many years now. And you've been one of the pioneers with all this experimenting in bourbon barrels, aging Zinfandel. And that started in 1980, right? When you were beginning your career in wine production and starting your own wines, and you didn't access to the French and the American aging barrels, and all with these old bourbon barrels on hand. So what you did, I think, is use these barrels for aging the wine, and then it resulted in with 1,000 stories that I would love to test it with you and talk about these beautiful aromas that I find already in my beautiful Riedel wine wings glass.
right.
These are the very, very new glasses of the Riedel company. And I'd love to make this wine tasting with you.
Okay. Let me go grab them.
Actually, I find already this chocolate and smoky noted here that I love in wines, because I always say we have to go back to basics and always find the fruit, the grapes, but I love it when they become even more corpulent with all those caramel and vanilla nuances that I can find in 1,000 Stories.
Yeah, and I think the key is that it's more that you start with the fruit, and then you've added this complexity to it, so that the characteristics start to meld together like a really good sauce. A really good sauce, right, has like a reduction sauce might have raspberries, but it's the other flavors that come together, but it's just becomes something transcendent.
It's like people, you get to know a person, and the first is just maybe the looks or the eyes or the way they talk, but then when you go a little bit more into getting to know them, and it becomes much more fascinating normally, and all the stories that they tell you and everything that's behind all the facades. So that's what has happened in the 1,000 Stories. It starts so soft and easily with the fruit, but then every minute when I give it some oxygen in my glass, it becomes more and more interesting, and those blueberries and blackcurrants become part of the caramel and the coffee and the licorice. So that's absolutely what we're looking for in a good wine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I think it has characteristics like music too. You can listen to music and you get something new out of the music. You'll notice something different. And I think having the wine, and as you say, letting it open up, that's where having a really nice glass helps, because it really opens the wine and it pulls all the aromatics together. And then, every 5 minutes or something, you get something new out of the wine.
And like you were saying with the music, I agree. Listening only to the piano, only to the violin is marvelous. But when you have this symphony that comes together, like what you did here, this is a symphony of music, of nuances, and then the experience is much more profound. And yes, this wine wings Riedel gives it so much space so the wine can breathe and really give us the message that you want to give us with 1,000 Stories. Zinfandel from California. Absolutely. What would you mix it with? What kind of food? What kind of music? What kind of company? Tell me more.
Well, I mean, I think I always think of like I love roasted pork, and I think like an Italian style, where you've got the herbs, of rosemary and thyme and some garlic, and you've let the meat really season and slow roasting. Because I think it's almost like you're drinking the wine. It is almost like a reduction sauce when you're having the food. So I like those kind of flavors. And I like all kinds of music. So I could have Led Zeppelin in the background. I could have something like Mozart or something. So it could be really
yes.
It could be all over the place. But
I will go. I would go with Bach, and I would go with Cochinita Pibil, which comes from Yucatan. And I had it for dinner. We had dinner yesterday with friends, and I think this with that Cochinita Pibil that was so beautifully made, it will go just marvelous. So this wine can go with Mexican food, or of course with Argentinian good meat, or so many things, because it's so balanced and so harmonic that I feel that it will be very easy to put different kind of music and different kind of food, and of course the company that's up to each one of us. That's absolutely very personal. What are those 1,000 stories that the wine tells us?
Say that again.
Why the name 1,000 Stories? What are all the stories behind?
Oh yeah, well, I think it starts with it starts with the story of bourbon. I think it's amazing. You have spirits made from corn, indigenous corn from the Americas, as a source of sugar, and they ferment it and then distill it, and then you're going into local barrels. You're going, you have the forests of the area, and every town had a blacksmith, but they had a cooper, someone to make barrels to store things, whether it was produce or fish or alcohol. And over time, those barrels sitting in the heat of the South, over a stamp with Old Bourbon County, that bourbon becomes defined, and it's so there's a great, sort of American story there. And I think it's the same with Zinfandel. Zinfandel in California is like, Carmenere in Chile or Malbec in Argentina. It becomes the dominant sort of grape, does really well. It's a table grape, not very successful. But in California, with the dryness and the heat, you can really get ripeness and those characteristics like Amarone, where the fruit is actually dried on the racks. You're actually drying the fruit on the vine, and you get this concentration and these wonderful flavors that sort of dominated. Before long, it was the primary grape. So it's kind of fun because it's this story of bourbon and the story of Zinfandel coming together. And when you work in the winery and the wine business, there's always stories. There's always interesting personalities. The person that I get the barrels from, he's a character, and he talks to the different distilleries, and I tell him, hey, I need 15 barrels, and he says, I've got this from this particular distillery, and the barrels are this old, and I say, perfect, send them to me. So there's always something going on. There's always something new. And of course, all the vineyards, these Zinfandel vineyards are some of our oldest vineyards. They're really, they have a lot of...
And I know you use the grapes from the most premium vineyards in California, and you select the most expressive plots. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, from Mendocino, from Paso Robles, Amador County in the Sierra foothills where the gold rush happened. These are all really amazing vineyards. In each area, the Zinfandel expresses itself a little bit differently. So you get sort of red raspberry in Mendocino, and then you get this really ripe full cherry in Paso Robles, and really white pepper and almost like celery, some kind of greener spicy notes that come from Amador. So each place has a characteristic that really melds together to make the wine.
And you really get to enhance this fruit, this spices note of the Zinfandel, and that's so beautiful, because all the expression that we see here that comes from the Californian soils with this structure and this flavor that gives us the characteristic of the intensity of the bourbon barrels and of course of the Zinfandel. So it makes it like a real symphony. And I agree with you, the people in the wine business and of course also in the barrels and the bourbon, and they're always so full of stories, full of passion, full of life. And that's also the beautiful part of the wine business.
It is. I mean, and when you think about, where you're having, as we talked earlier, where you're having the wine, you're having it with friends, you're having it at a restaurant, it's around interesting food and conversation and music. Wine is just part of the most important things in life, right? It's just it's really it's really fantastic to have.
Wine gave me so many friends around the world that it's just difficult to explain, because I do travel around the world, and I've made many friends in the hotel business too, because I also have this passion as the people in wine business. But the wine has made me have so many minutes, seconds, hours, and days of friendship, of storytelling, of enjoying really those flavors, those nuances that are in a beautiful wine. And Thousand Stories made me fall in love from the first moment. And it's really a pleasure to be able to talk with you again and to be able to try the wine again. And I understand that in Mexico Thousand Stories is doing just beautiful. How many bottles are here in our country, and where can we find it?
Well, I think you could find it this is my fourth time, and we've found it in a lot of different stores. I'm trying to think. I'm going to need some help here with this, the latest. But you can go ahead.
I'm sure it's everywhere in the city market and
right.
And everywhere. And so we can find these beautiful Thousand Stories and enjoy this experience in Mexico.
Absolutely.
That's so great, Bob. And please, anything else that you want to tell our friends from the American Society and everybody else that is watching us and love wines?
Well, I think, every vintage is unique, and we just finished our 2020 vintage, and the fruit was amazing, very ripe. We had a really good season and a bit of a drought, and so that created the concentration. So I think there are good harvests to come, and so we're working on new projects, and so we're always we've got new things coming. So there's more to explore with bourbon barrel aging, that's for sure.
That's marvelous. We have to know everything about these new inventions of yours, so we can be part of your beautiful words of wine. And thank you, Bob Lou, for being with me today, with talking to us, and for letting us be part of this beautiful experience and be part of the story of 1000 Stories.
Thank you, Deby.
Thank you. Thank you, my dear friends. What a pleasure. Larry Rubin, President of the American Society, and all of you, thank you for joining us. And thank you, Bob Lou, winemaker, the mastermind behind 1000 Stories, this bourbon barrel-aged Zinfandel from California. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.